Netflix and TV Tokyo's live-action adaptation of Mob Psycho 100 is unwatchable garbage. Literally unwatchable, like you actually could not pay me enough money to sit through the whole series and give it a thorough review. I mean, obviously it was going to be a train wreck from the second they announced it. Live-action anime adaptations always suck, and this story in particular is so abstract and surreal that it just doesn't make sense in live action to begin with, but I wasn't expecting it to be this awful. I haven't seen special effects this bad, editing this terrible, or facial expressions this forced and over the top since back when Jim Carrey was at the top of his career. You know, before he shifted gears to convincing parents to let their kids die from preventable diseases. Seriously, what a fucking asshole. Sorry, where was I? Right. Mob Psycho 100 is a manga from One, the creator of One Punch Man, that explores the life of Mob, a socially awkward middle schooler with incredible psychic powers, who really wishes he could just be normal and popular. Between his part-time job as an exorcist and the actions of some shady, evil organizations, he does get into some psychic brawls from time to time, but his ultimate goal is just to grow as a person and get on with his daily life. It's a refreshingly original premise. It also happens to be one of my favorite anime and favorite manga of all time. One's writing for the series is nothing short of transcendent, and his art is charming, if nothing else, and Bone's adaptation is an innovative, phenomenally directed work of mixed media magic. So I thought I'd have a lot to say about Netflix's take on the series regardless of its quality, but I'm sorry, I just can't do it. It's so incompetently made on every level, and there are so many better things that I could be doing with my time right now, like refreshing myself on Steins Gate so that I can properly enjoy and talk about Zero, or watching the old Galactic Heroes OVA, or slamming my head against a wall repeatedly and praying for death. But I did force myself to sit through one episode of the series, and even that was enough to give me something pretty substantial to rip into, because Netflix took one of my favorite jokes in any anime or manga ever and took a big steaming shit all over it. So what's the joke? Well, in episode 2 of the anime, chapters 3 and 4 of the manga, we and Mob are introduced to the Telepathy Research Club, a group of slackers who hang out in a club room after school, eating snacks, and, well, that's about it, though they say that they're developing their telepathic powers. One of the members quits because he's getting weird looks about the club from his classmates, and they're left scrambling to find someone new to join because without 5 members, the student council will force them to disband. And they have no time to do it because the student council vice president shows up 1 femtosecond after their member quits, telling them that a new club wants their room, almost as though he's been waiting for an opportunity to kick them out of there. Luckily for the Telepathy Club, Mob has just been talking about how he feels he's not doing enough with his youth, and he's got psychic powers to boot. As soon as they set this up, you have an idea of how it's going to go. The Telepathy Club is going to approach Mob out of desperation, and after thinking about it for a bit, he's finally going to join at the last minute, saving their butts. Afterwards, they'll find out about his powers and join him as he gets embroiled in increasingly dangerous and kooky psychic shenanigans. He gets to have a place where he belongs, and in return, their long-dead passion for the supernatural is reignited as they learn that it actually is real. But that's not how things go down, even though they make you believe it will be right up to the last second. After the club approaches Mob, as you'd expect, he begins considering his options and thinking about joining them. He takes a bit more time to think it over in the anime than in the manga, going on a job with Reagan, but at the end of the day, in both versions, he ends up in the club room where the Telepathy Club is confronted by the student council, along with the intimidating tough guys of the Body Improvement Club that wants to take over their room. After being confronted by the vice president about whether or not he actually wants to join, and remembering advice from his conman mentor Reagan, Mob digs deep inside himself to figure out what he really wants out of life. After recalling how his psychic powers once helped him impress his childhood crush Tsubomi, and thinking about how she's drifted away from him, becoming more interested in the school's jocks, he reaches a conclusion and decides to join the club. The Body Improvement Club. Because Mob wants to impress Tsubomi by getting swole, not by hanging out with a bunch of losers in the club room. God, I love this joke, and not just because you gotta respect any show that dedicates a whole episode to setting up a single punchline. It really works on every level, and that's impressive because in order to work, the joke both has to come as a genuine surprise to us in the audience, while still making perfect sense based on the progression of the story and what we know about the characters. So, what makes it all come together? This joke is an ingenious subversion of a bog-standard anime trope that we've seen play out 1,000 times before. The evil student council wants to tear apart a close-knit club of friends for no other reason than the rules demanded. Only if you look at it objectively, there's a lot of good reasons that the club should be disbanded. The members are really just exploiting a loophole to take away space that other clubs could make better use of, all so that they can hang out after school and spend their $20 a month club budget on junk food. No wonder the council's so eager to give them the boot. They're the villains in this story, trying to take advantage of the school and mob for their own personal gain. But we don't see that immediately because we're so familiar with this trope that we just expect them to be in the right. Most of the time, the clubs in these stories do come off as very desperate and manipulative to the person they're trying to bring in. Plus, Vice President Tokugawa comes off as a total asshole, which, he kinda is. We're also introduced to the club from their perspective, and of course, from that point of view, they're gonna be framed as correct. And they also have just enough personality that we can picture them as a decent supporting cast for the show. Spending an entire episode, or 2 chapters as the case may be, focusing on this storyline makes the club seem like they have some sort of greater plot significance, instead of just being effectively gag fodder. We expect this story to have big ramifications on the plot moving forward, and it does, but only because Mob signs up with the bodybuilders and they end up being his friends and helping him better himself instead. Speaking of the Body Improvement Club, they're explicitly framed as dangerous, intimidating thugs surrounded by an aura of menace and JoJo villain sound effects, in the manga at least, from the moment they walk into the room. We also meet them pretty late in the storyline, so it's unlikely that we'll make the connection with Mob's previously expressed desire to be more popular and second guess what the punchline will be. But when the punchline does come, all of the information clicks in an instant, and we laugh all the harder because it makes perfect sense for Mob to join the Body Improvement Club. He's already got psychic powers, so why would a telepathy research club be of any use to him? Especially one that doesn't actually do anything and really deserves to be shut down. The only reason to have him join is, frankly, lazy writing. This moment turns our expectations on their head, presenting a fresh perspective on a story arc that's been done to death in manga and anime, broadening our understanding of Mob as a character, and leaving us wondering where the story could go from there. And this is subjective, but it also makes us laugh our asses off, which is arguably equally important. It's a carefully constructed piece of narrative machinery that impresses me every time I look at it. And the Netflix series tears out basically every moving part that makes that machine function. For starters, in the drama, we only ever see the club as a side character. Yes, character, singular. The president, Kurata Tomei, is the only member of the club in this version, and we don't even see the vice president threaten to shut her down. That threat only comes up toward the end of the scene. As far as we know, she's just some weirdo who tackles Mob because she's weird. Also, this is the take that you guys are gonna use? Yeah, I totally believe she's overpowering him. Right off the bat, we have zero context for why it might matter that the club will be shut down. There's no friendship to tear up, and on top of that, no big group of supporting characters to potentially join the cast. If Mob joined the club, it would just be the 2 of them, which would be a really weird dynamic for a TV show. This also happens like 15 minutes into the episode, and the gag's done a few minutes after that, meaning that Tomei doesn't really seem significant in the same way she does when she gets a whole episode dedicated to her story. In other words, we have zero narrative reason to root for the Telepathy Club, and zero reason to believe it will be a significant part of the plot. They haven't even bothered to set up the tired old trope that this joke is meant to subvert. But that's not the only problem by a long shot. When Tomei first meets Mob, she immediately is drawn to him, saying that he received her psychic signals, and when she gets him to the club room, we see it's filled with all sorts of fancy sci-fi bullshit. It's like she's actually studying the paranormal or something, which undercuts the whole point of her character. In the manga, she's got a passing interest in the supernatural, but it's really just an excuse to waste time. We're not supposed to take her seriously in that way. We're also supposed to be intimidated by the Body Improvement Club when we first meet them, and yeah, that doesn't happen. Like, the music is heavy and they make really mean faces, but the camera presents them from a mostly neutral perspective, not as the intimidating giants they are in the anime and manga, and they're with Mob's brother Ritsu, for some reason, who we already know is a good guy who cares about his brother, so by association, they're probably decent people as well. And, oh yeah, right before this scene, the show introduces the Body Improvement Club by explicitly framing them as the answer to Mob's question of how to change himself. They're presented with triumphant, upbeat music that's meant to leave Mob and us in awe of their energy and fitness and create the impression that he wants to join their club, 2 minutes before we're supposed to see them as potential villains. Yeah, that is some grade F fucking awful filmmaking. And even worse joke delivery. Not only does the show's sloppy editing mean that it takes forever to get from the setup of I'm joining the club to the punchline of the Body Improvement Club, where the manga and anime make that very quick and snappy, they tell us the goddamn punchline 3 minutes before it happens! It's kind of impressive how hard they missed the point here. This is a degree of script level incompetence that we don't often see even in the worst live action anime adaptations, and from everything I've seen of the show, shit, from the trailer, it seems like it's just the tip of the iceberg. In a vacuum, some of these decisions kinda make sense, like cutting the other club members who don't have an impact on the plot and reducing the time the club's introduction takes in order to make the story move faster, but only if you totally ignore what Mob Psycho 100 is about as a whole and what purpose these elements serve by being written the way they are. It seems like the writers of this drama haven't got the faintest understanding of any of that. The whole point of the fucking story is that psychic powers aren't a big deal, that it's more important to be a well-rounded person no matter what you can do. Yet from its goddamn opening monologue, this show is playing up espers like they're the sole defining feature of its world, the most important thing in all of existence. It certainly seems like they couldn't have missed the point any harder if they tried. This could very well be a worse anime adaptation than anything else that I've covered on this channel, but I can't say for sure because I'm never, ever going to watch the rest of it. I'm never gonna know how bad it gets. All I know is that they butchered one of my favorite gags and favorite character introductions ever, and as far as I'm concerned, that's enough for me to permanently write this series off. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.